Regional Medical Center, and I oversee 5 departments. So I have respiratory therapy, EKG, EEG, which stands for electroencephalogram, echo, and the vascular access service team. So I have quite a array of colleagues that I oversee. I've been a respiratory therapist since 2011. I graduated from TCC and started my career at TMH. I worked there as a critical care neonatal transport respiratory therapist. I became the director of their pulmonary rehab program. And meanwhile, I was getting my bachelor's and my master's degree online, and I was working here at Capital Regional. Also, got really close to the director here, who became my mentor. And over time, I got close with him, had a lot of talks with him, and then he unfortunately passed away. So many people in the community know Kurt Varner. He was huge in my development, and he kind of brought me under his wing and taught me what he knows about management. And when the position came open, God blessed me with the opportunity to become the director over here.
Right. So I know for your staff, how's your staff doing? Like, how are they doing?
So I am extremely blessed to have, I would say, and I'm biased, the best staff in the world. The respiratory therapists that work here, we see this kind of stuff on the regular. We don't see it to the magnitude of COVID-19, how we have all these heightened restrictions and all these other things, but we deal with communicable diseases all of the time. And so now when we're having to take all of these extra measures, I just can't be more proud. I couldn't be more proud of how they've kind of stepped up to the plate. They come into work every day ready to take care of this community, ready to face whatever comes their way. And they're making sure that they're safe, they're using the correct PPE, they're making sure that their patients are getting the best care. In a time where we couldn't have visitors in the hospital, they've kind of stepped in and been that support system for our patients. So like I said, I'm extremely, extremely blessed, and I'm very proud of the work that the respiratory therapists here have been doing.
And I actually checking in. I see Katrina's checking in. She's actually my sorority sister. And then we have Miss Raquel Harrell. And then my Aunt Rochelle, all the way from Maryland. She's a nurse as well. So thank you for joining us. And I really just want to say sincerely, thank you so much for the sacrifices that you all are making for our community. And in a time where you all could be anywhere else with your families, you're here to support us in our community and everything. So I don't take that lightly. And I just want to just say thank you to you and your staff. And if there's any resources that you need, I know that we've had a couple of people since we posted the interview to call and say, hey, what can I do? Is there anything that you need? Do we want to bless them with, some gift cards? Do we want to bless them with face masks? So if there's anything that we could need in our followers and the people that are in our group, if you need anything in your team, just let us know.
I will. I'll say the biggest thing here at Capital Regional, our parent company, which is HCA, has done a great job in terms of providing the PPE that we need. So every day when the colleagues come in, they have the PPE that is needed to take care of their patients. At this point, we're not wearing the homemade masks, the cotton masks that others are wearing in the community, as we have a good enough stock here. And generally, we have a good amount of everything that we need when we come to work. But outside of this hospital, we understand that there's a lot of people in need in the community. So a lot of the times when I get requests for additional resources and things like that, I'll point people towards other members in the community that are in need. There's a lot of folks who, when they're out of school, there's just a lot of things that fall through the cracks that our education system picked up on. And I think that's where some of those resources could be. We're just in a really good position that our organization is taking care of us. We haven't had to cut back on staff. We've actually been able to work everybody, and it's really worked out.
That's really amazing. That's really amazing. So I just want to talk for a few minutes about just being a parent. Like, in fact, I usually kind of do some questions towards the end, but the most pressing question that I have as a parent is like, when is this over? when does my life go back to normal? Or for some of us, they say it won't ever go back to normal, but we know that meaning, we may have made some advancements since this time or things that we would have picked up from our families. But when can we expect to know that everything is safe?
So safety and normalcy, I think those are the two kind of buzzwords going around right now. I think this is partially going to be part of our new normal, and the sense of our new normal, I think, is the heightened sense of self. So that kind of bubble that you have when you're walking around. What good is coming out of this is the focus on hand washing and the focus on personal hygiene that I think has been somewhat overlooked in the general community, and now people are understanding that is the best way to prevent the transmission of these communicable diseases is something as simple as washing your hands. So going forward, no, you may not see the mask over the next, say, 2-3 months, but you will see hopefully people taking more precautions, people being just putting a little bit more thought into the interactions that they have when they're out in the community to ensure that everyone is safe. Governor DeSantis has started reopening the state, so we'll see, businesses starting to open back up, which is good for our economy. But as we do that, and as people start to get back into the community, I think it's just good that we all focus on being safe and washing your hands.
Okay, so yesterday we did a little experiment, and actually we've been talking about the coronavirus just because, and you have kids too. And
Mhm.
so, sometimes we can cause our kids more anxiety than they need.
Yes.
um, and so going into this, not knowing how long, this would last, I just kind of was like, okay, I cannot, like when we have hurricanes, we have on CNN or Fox, and it's just all craziness and everybody, and so with this situation as a mom, I said, okay, you know what, less news, less, things is better, and we'll just do it in small digestible chunks. So what are some things that we could do to kind of keep our children from having the anxiety of, oh my gosh, I don't want to go into the grocery store, I'm just so petrified, like
Right.
what do we do?
So the first thing that you everyone should really do with their kids is have an open and honest conversation. I think as parents, our job is to protect our children, and sometimes in protecting them, we try to shield them from information, just so we don't have that feeling of anxiety. But having that transparent conversation in a way that your child can understand is important, so that they know when we go out into the community, this is why you see people wearing masks. This is why you have to stand 6 feet apart. It's because the coronavirus, or you can call it COVID-19. My son, he calls it the sickness, because that's what feels good to him. But just letting them know it's transmitted, or one person can pass it to another person this way. So to keep ourselves safe, this is what we're going to do. Have your child, if you have to go out into the community, wear a mask and have them put the mask on at home so they know exactly how it feels. Have them look in the mirror, see themselves wearing the mask, and it kind of brings down that anxiety level. Make sure that they understand exactly what they should do when they're out in the community. I
Okay.
wouldn't recommend taking your kids to the grocery store if you don't have to, because you're in very close proximity with people there. But if you have to take your kids out, just let them know. Let's try not to touch every single cereal box on the cereal aisle as you walk down there. And right, try not to do that, and don't touch your face as much as possible, which is really hard for kids. So that's just something that takes a lot of reminding, and all of it just tie it back into we're just trying to be safe. There's nothing for us to be scared about. We're not afraid. We're just being precautious. And if you bring it to your children that way, just keep it about it being always precautionary. Yeah, you can kind of reel back on some of that anxiety that kids are feeling. I am really big on limiting the amount of news coverage that the
Okay.
kids see, just because they can't understand that type of vocabulary, and there is a lot of kind of doom and gloom in some of the media. So as parents, we just have to step up and have those open conversations with our kids. That is actually protecting them more than shielding them from that information.
We also have, before I move on, we have Jerome Turner. He's up in Atlanta. And then we have Renee McPherson who joined us too. And Renee is someone who I'm always like, girl, is everything okay? What's going on today? Am I going to make it? You know, so she's, I'm always bothering her and inboxing her because she's a nurse as well. Just a family nurse in general. So I thank her too. And so going back to the mask. So, and making sure that our children can essentially see themselves when they put the mask on. I think that's very important for our younger children too. But for our older children who think it's, you know, it's cool to wear a mask, you know, they might have the mask on their mouth, but not on the nose. So what things can we do for our older young adults to keep them, you know, this is a cool thing? Is it buying a mask that might be very cool for them, getting it, you know, designed? What do you think for that?
So I think you want to make sure that you're wearing a mask that is effective, and the most effective way is to make sure that you're covering your nose and your mouth. Those are your points of entry. So anything, your nose, your mouth, and your eyes are your open areas, your mucosal glands that you can get things into. So if you're wearing the mask under your nose, it's just not going to be effective. So making sure you have those conversations with your children about, yes, you want to have a cool looking mask. You can have all the printed ones. You can have, I've seen a lot out in the community that people have, and those are all great as long as it's covering your nose and your mouth. So because a lot of people are what we call obligatory nose breathers, who just always breathe in and out through their nose. And if you have your nose outside the mask, it's almost like you're not wearing one at all. So just making sure that they have that mask on. I've seen a lot of people with it bedazzled and jewelry all over it. I probably wouldn't go that far just because the glue and stuff like that can kind of clog up some of the areas that the air is supposed to go in and out through. It'll actually make it harder for you to breathe, having all of that stuff on it. Just the simple fabric cotton masks are wonderful. They really help to kind of keep yourself safe and make sure that if you are carrying anything, you don't transmit it. And if there's somebody out in the community, it reduces your risk of catching anything while you're out.
Okay. And then what about, you know, when we go back to our normal lives? I know we mentioned before, this is kind of our new normal for quite some time, but I mean, you know, how do we prevent ourselves and prevent our kids? You know, you have kids now who are ready to, you know, I'm ready to get my friend just because the world has opened up. They're thinking like problem is solved. We're all, you know, it's gone away. So what do we do? Because a part of us, we know that it's going to get worse or it might come back. Do you think that it might come back, or, you know, everything that we hear, you know, in the community, what do you think from those perspectives?
So there is a for sure possibility that we could be dealing with the coronavirus next year. So coronavirus is the family, which includes SARS, MERS, some of these other diseases that we've been through before. And there's for sure a possibility of it coming back, just as the flu comes back each year, whereas COVID-19 is fairly different from the flu. But I think once everybody kind of gets back to the community being out and everything again, we'll all just start to kind of figure it out. I think, like I said earlier, everybody understanding the importance of hand washing, that'll be the huge thing. I think some of our highly densely populated areas, those metropolitan areas like New York, who were hit hard, mostly because of their mass transit system, where they have a lot of touch points in the community. I think the lesson they'll learn from this is wiping down their subway stations and cleanliness in these high traffic areas to prevent the prolific spread of this disease like we saw this go around. So there's going to be a lot of lessons learned that we'll take to the future, and hopefully that'll help when this comes around again. If it's not this specific strain, it will be something going forward. Those viruses, most of them start out in animals and they make that transition to humans. Okay. And once they make that transition, there's not much we can do because we've never seen it before. So you won't see a vaccine for it for years to come.
And it's interesting to say that because yesterday, you know, I was watching the news. Yes. we do. And I was really amazed, and I was telling my husband John, they had a segment where they were talking about the airplanes and how people were wearing masks, but now, the airlines are now wiping down the seats and wiping down the handles. And I'm like, oh, okay, well what were they doing before?
Right.
And so, we kind of chuckled about that with me and John, but we was like, oh, okay, yeah, they do it at the end of the night. But you're talking about flights, in the teens in some days, you can have a lot of flights going out on these planes. And, just the idea of, we've all sat next to that person, or so that it's just so amazing to know how we had not been taking precautions. So how do we things that we can do in our home, like we wipe down our doorknobs. Of course, we have a no shoe policy, but that's always been for us, so we don't wear shoes in the house. But what are some other basic things that we can do that we don't ever really think about, but it's like, oh yeah, we should have been doing that all along?
So it's disinfecting major touch points. So as you said, doorknobs, your handles in your kitchen, all of those things that are major touch points for everyone in your household, those are things that need to be regularly cleaned. Especially if you entertain guests, you have people in your house all the time. It's just making sure that you're disinfecting all of those hard surfaces, those non-porous surfaces where people are touching a lot of. And that's where bacteria and all that stuff can live for days and weeks. The COVID-19.
So like your alarm panels and things like that. Even like our car doorknobs and things like that too, making sure that we wipe them down, because a lot of us, I've seen some pictures online and people speaking about wearing gloves, and we think that's protecting us, but in the end, you forgot to wipe down your wallet, so technically, or your credit card, so technically. So can you give us some insight on that too?
Gloves are for in the healthcare setting primarily. So you should not be wearing gloves in the community. There are specific needs for gloves, but as you said, if you go to the grocery store, for example, and you touch a package of meat, and you say, okay, well, I didn't need that one, so you put it back, and then you reach in your back pocket because your cell phone's ringing, or you reach in your purse because your cell phone's ringing. With that same gloved hand, you've now contaminated everything in your back pocket or everything in your purse. The major thing to do is just wash your hands. Take off the gloves, leave the gloves at the house. You can wear your mask to keep yourself safe when you have to be within 6 feet of people, but wash your hands. Do a nice wipe on your cell phone screen after you leave the grocery store if you've been touching a lot of stuff with an alcohol-based wipe. And that's the biggest thing that'll keep you safe. Gloves, it's just not recommended for people to wear gloves out in the community, and also wearing the mask out in the community. You only need them if you're going to be within 6 feet of someone. So if you're going outside for a walk, take the mask off, enjoy the fresh air.
So so for the mask, you have the ones that are disposable. How many, even if you put a paper towel in between it, how many good wears can we get out of that mask?
So if it's become soiled, if it is wet anywhere on the mask, for the disposable ones, then it is not effective. So I actually have an example of them here in my office. So if you have one of these that we see out in the community quite a bit, if you have one of these and you've been coughing or sneezing or what have you, and the inside, what you're wearing, is now soiled, it's wet, it's damp, this is no longer effective because the porous membrane in here is not allowing for you to breathe correctly. It's actually making it harder for you to breathe, to get air. So it's time for you to throw that away. The cotton mask, you can wash and reuse those, and those are as good as long as the integrity of the fabric is intact. You can continue to use it.
And then what about the ones, I've seen some with like the painter, like the ones the painters wear with the little metal piece. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, those are, I have one of those as well. I just happen to be prepared here in my office. But so these are N95 masks, and the 95 stands for it filters out 95% of particulates in the air. And what you want for these, if you have this type of mask, is to ensure that that metal piece is fitted around your nose so that
Okay.
you can have a tight seal on that one. This same thing, if it gets wet or it's soiled, it's time to throw that away as well. But these are more so the painting industry and the hardware industry use those, and we use them here in the healthcare industry. When you're out in the community, these aren't as needed because you're not that close to people. So wearing the homemade mask or the regular, what we call ear loop mask, are appropriate when you're out in the community.
Okay, I'm gonna look over here at the screen. We have Gina Wilson who's saying this is some great advice, and she didn't know not to wear a mask if you're just walking, which is true because a lot of us are picking up with our health and wellness and walking and running and all of that now. And we pretty much have been wearing masks, so that's really good. And then Brittany Jones, one of our Saras, said this is an alpha and zeta, and we're great people. So that's really good. We won't do our call outs today. We'll
No,
say
we'll stay away from that one for today. But you see, I'm always representing. You got it right there.
right. And I have on Zeta Blue just for the record. So
All right.
yeah. So let's talk about some activities that we can do within our homes. And like for our younger kids, and then I want to talk us about career and college exploration with our older kids because really and truly with this whole pandemic, it's really brought to light a lot of different healthcare, you know, jobs or careers.
Right.
And so things that we never thought of, people that we never really thought of, are now like being highlighted. And I think that's really good for our kids to see themselves that, oh wow, I could be this, when I grow up as well. So how can we make the connection for folks?
So I'll say the best thing to do, I'll start with the first part, in-house activities is just spending more family time together, having a lot more conversations. A lot of us are binge watching a lot of shows just because, we're trying to fill the time, but turning the TV off and making sure that you're sitting down and you're talking with your family, getting to know everybody a lot better. That's you're binge watching a lot of shows. A little echo there. But that's one of the biggest things is to just talk with your family and use this time to kind of get to know them better and to see what your kids are interested in. And if they are interested in the healthcare fields, now is the time to start looking into other disciplines within healthcare. So one of the ones that's been majorly highlighted is respiratory therapy. If I asked many people a couple years ago what a respiratory therapist does, a lot of them wouldn't know. They would think that we only give breathing treatments. But for all of the patients who've ended up in our care due to COVID-19, they've most likely encountered a respiratory therapist many times. I've intubated a couple of COVID patients here at our hospital and managed them on a mechanical ventilator along with my amazing respiratory therapist. So that's one discipline of healthcare that's been highlighted. And I think out of this, we'll kind of get a surge of new respiratory therapists who understand the importance of what we do in the healthcare community, not only here in the hospital, but out in the community in terms of education and ensuring that people are sticking to their smoking cessation, asthma management, all of those kinds of things, because our job is just such a wide range.
Right. And speaking of asthma, I have a child that has asthma too, or allergies as well. And so, it's interesting because, how do people not, oh, you sneeze, oh, it's Corona. So, how do we, how do we really, create, awareness, because we have to go back to a sense of normalcy.
Right.
People, and I will say, this season here of with the pollen, it was really heavy. And it was at the same time that all of this was taking place too. So you have any tips for us for that?
I think before COVID-19 really hit, there was already a big push for people making sure that you're coughing into your elbow, your good sneezing practices and things like that. And that more so came from the flu. So 2-3 years ago, we had the worst flu outbreak that we had in over a decade here in Tallahassee. And the therapists who are on and the healthcare providers who are on will know exactly what I'm talking about. It was pretty bad here in the hospital, just with the amount of patients. And since then, I think our community really has taken a really good stance on making sure that people are educated about if you're coughing, turn into your elbow, turn away when you're sneezing, and then washing your hands. I know I keep going back to that, but that is the single most effective way to decrease the transmission of communicable diseases is washing your hands. And I'm hoping that's the overarching theme as we go forward is every time you get home, every time you leave a public place, use your alcohol-based hand sanitizer, or if you can, wash your hands for 20 seconds.
Okay, and so when you say 20 seconds, if I'm, and I know, I mean, obviously the happy birthday song is a good
Mhm.
one. Any other cool songs you think that we can sing as we're washing our hands to teach our younger kids, or really, what about our older kids? Because everybody's in a rush to get back to their phone. So how do we, teach our
It's
kids?
the best thing to do as parents, pick the song that your children like, and then just get a 20-second snippet of that song and just sing that first 20 seconds. Because if you try to teach them a separate song, my little boys love the Trolls movie, so the
Okay.
new one that came out. So my wife will sing that parts from that song from that movie, and that'll get us going. So just do things that your children are familiar with, and it will entice them to be more compliant with what you're trying to ask them to do. Because some of our kids, they don't really like the happy birthday song, or they don't like all of those different songs. But if you pick something that they already like, they're more likely to want to do it more often. Now you'll get tired of hearing that song, but they'll be safe.
Hey, you can learn a different language too in that song. So
Yes, that would actually
everybody,
be
if
really
you
good.
can just kind of drop a funny song that you think your child would sing as they're washing their hands as well. Kind of give us some ideas of what you might do in your home. And so, Antoine, I know you were doing you had some stats, some statistics, and I really want to talk about you and your team because a lot of people don't know that you all are kind of like a hidden gem, in our community as well. And so I've been really following the news here locally, and I think you've been probably in 2 or 3 different articles within the last, overnight. So I
Mhm.
can imagine how that is. But really, you all have one article I read, you all were rated an A.
Mhm.
Is that right?
Yes, so the Leapfrog, which is a hospital rating system based on a lot of different factors, it's the safety rating. We were rated an A for the second time in a row, which is an amazing feat for our hospital. It just shows that we're putting our patients first. We're ensuring that everybody who entrusts us with our care gets the highest level and highest quality care when they're here. So that organization looks at a lot of different quality metrics from our surgery center to our emergency room and through all of the different service lines within our hospital. So we're very, very excited about
And that's right here at Capital Regional.
that. So we have the highest rating in our region.
Wow.
Everyone else in town is doing a great job independently to make sure that they're taking care of their patients. We just have been very blessed with a really good team of colleagues here at Capital Regional who are dedicated to ensuring our patients get safe and quality care.
Okay, and then the other article that I saw you all in, I think y'all were kind of sharing your experiences, and I want to say it was one more. Um, I can't think of the other one, but it's been 3 for sure. You want to tell us a little bit more about those articles?
So the first article that we did was more so speaking about how we're taking care of patients here at Capital Regional with COVID-19. So we were going over how our hospital has designated 2 COVID units, one up on our 8th floor, one in our ICU, and that's where we've cohorted all of our patients to keep them away from everyone else and to make it a lot easier to provide their care because all of our colleagues can kind of do clustered care within there. And it has really worked out for us to date. We've tested, and I'm looking over at my screen where I have everything written down. We've tested 414 people. We've discharged from Capital Regional a little over 40 patients who were initially tested positive. and who have recovered and left Capital Regional and went back home to their families. So we've done some really, really good work here. I do want to say that the community has done an amazing job. Some of the drive-through testing sites, that's been huge. We just started it out in Gadsden County. Our Gadsden County Emergency Room has started that in conjunction with the Gadsden County Health Commission. And those things are amazing because people can go get tested. You don't have to have a physician recommendation to go there. They just ask you a series of questions, and then they'll call you back with your results. And that's really been a huge hit and allowed people to kind of get a hold of if they are testing positive, and then they give them steps on what to do thereafter.
So if we feel like we are, short of breath, or we lost a sense of taste or a sense of smell, what are some other things that you think, some indicators that, hey, like I might need to get tested. This isn't allergies, what are some things that you think we could?
So the difficult part about COVID-19 is it presents with flu-like symptoms, and it presented with flu-like symptoms during flu season. So it made it very difficult for us. But now that the flu is starting to die down, if you are still having the shortness of breath, the flu-like symptoms, so shortness of breath, the fever is the big one. Fever is your body's way of fighting off infection. So if you have a fever that is not going down with the use of over-the-counter medications such as Tylenol and ibuprofen, that is something that is kind of a red flag. And you see that this isn't allergies. This isn't something that I normally would be dealing with. I don't have any other things that are going on. I may have been in contact with someone out in the community, or maybe someone who is at my house. Those are the times to reach out to your healthcare provider, or you can use one of the drive-through sites and go get tested. Now, I will be very open and honest. COVID-19 testing is not fun. If you've seen any of the videos, that swab does go very, very far back into your nasal airway, and it's done because that's where the best sample is located, to ensure that there's not a lot of cross-contamination, to ensure that they're getting a secure test, a very accurate test. They do have to sample pretty far back in your nose. Some people say it's like sampling your brain. So it's the Q-tip basically that they use is actually quite long.
So how long, at one point, it was taking like 7 or 14 days or something like that for the test to get back. That's not the case anymore?
No. So with time comes process improvement. And that's what's happened in this time. At the beginning of it, it was very new. So we didn't have very many testing sites. We had a shortage of kits. We had all of that stuff just because this boom kind of hit us out of nowhere. So over time, a lot of the local labs and some of the labs that we send out to have improved their processes. And now we have around a 24 to 48 hour turnaround, which makes it awesome for us here in the hospital, because if you come in and we're testing you for COVID-19, we go ahead and isolate. We ensure that you're safe and that there's no transmission to any other colleague or patient. And then if we can get the results back in 24 hours, if you turn up negative, we can take you off of that isolation and continue that high standard of care in a unit that is not dedicated to COVID.
Okay, so before we go, Antoine, can you just tell us if you had to do 3 activities? I know, like yesterday, we did the pepper project where we had the soap on one plate and the pepper and the water on the other. And it was kind of cool to see how, the germs kind of move when you put the pepper moved. That was really interesting. But are there any other activities that you think we can do, not just with our younger folks, but what about our older children too?
Activities. I think, so first, family activities, go outside. It is beautiful outside. Go outside, walk around, socially distance, but go outside and take a walk with your older kids. I think it's finding something that they are interested in, and kind of using that to explain what's going on. The soap and pepper idea is actually pretty cool. I think trying to figure out what your kids are into and seeing if you can make any correlations to what's going on now to help them better understand what's going on in their community is probably very, very helpful. That's probably the biggest thing. The technological age that we're in, most of our kids who have devices are all on YouTube, are all on all these different platforms. So it's sharing those videos. If you find something that's very interesting and you think that it's at a level that your kid can understand, share it with them. Sit down and watch videos on the platforms that they use. Watch it with them so that you know that they're getting reliable information. Because I know for my children, they love their tablets. So if I can steal some time away from them and show them something informative, that's a huge win on the parent side.
Right, and I know just for all of our parents, before we close out today's segment, if you were to go on our creative weekend planning page and you kind of scroll down a little bit or up a little bit, you'll see some PBS Kids had something going on with the Cookie Monster and Elmo. That was another good one. And then there were some other articles in there of things too, of entities and educational entities that are actually doing awareness type things for the kids and projects too. So I really, Anton, I really want to thank you as well as your team and your family, for everything that y'all do for our community and the sacrifices that you're making too. It's really huge. You're putting yourselves at risk every day to support the greater good, as well as all of my nurse friends and families that's on here. So for all of our viewers, if you can just kind of say thank you. I know some of you are like, this is really a great segment. If you all can give them some words of encouragement, that would be awesome as well. And so we really just thank you so much, Antoine, for being here with us and sharing your expertise. Is there anything else? And even if we recap what we can actually do, is there anything else that you think of that we haven't captured?
No, I do thank you for having me on. I am, even though all this is going on, I've told my wife and my kids I am blessed to be in this position. Everything happens for a reason, and I believe that I've been placed here to ensure that help in the fight to make sure that our community is safe. So I thank God for being able to have the job that I have and the people that I work with. To the nurses out there, happy Nurses Week. They are an amazing group of individuals, and we celebrate them this week in the sacrifice that they make alongside of respiratory therapy and the rest of our colleagues here at the hospital to ensure the safety and security of this community. I think the overarching thing that I'd probably leave with is wash your hands. That is, if you want to prevent the spread of anything, wash your hands. Stay 6 feet away from everybody right now. I know the state is starting to open back up. Do that. Thankfully, we're doing that in waves, but make sure that you're still staying away from people as much as you can, spending that time with your family, wearing a mask when necessary, and washing your hands as much as possible.
All right, so thank you so much again for joining us. We will have another Creative Break Live next week. And so we look forward to everyone joining us. And thank you so much for everything that you all do again, Antoine.
All right, thank you.